Good morning. I'm David Warm. I am the Executive Director of the Mid-America Regional Council, and it is my distinct pleasure this morning to welcome you to the 6th Annual Aging Positive Conference. I think you know that our goal for today is to offer a high-quality, low-cost conference and training for professionals and volunteers who program for older adults. We recognize the high cost of national conferences. That's not even a possibility this year for so many of us. And so we have been committed for a number of years to provide an alternative for our regional community and beyond. As with past conferences, the workshops are offered in 3 areas of focus. The first being management and leadership skill building. The second, evidence-based programming. And the third is innovative programming. The pandemic, of course, led us to do this virtually this year and to have fewer workshops. This is the second year we've been compelled to do that. But we're very confident that this year's lineup will provide the same high quality experience that you've come to expect from the Age Positive Conference. I want to acknowledge the attendance today that includes professionals and volunteers across Kansas City in the aging field, as well as many across the state of Kansas, across the state of Missouri, and even beyond. The success of this conference for 6 years in a row demonstrates the high value that all of you as professionals and volunteers in the aging sector place on ensuring that we have successful aging in place program available to the communities that we serve. Representatives today are from senior centers, community centers, parks and recreation departments, libraries, universities, city and county governments, many others that attend this conference, and all of you to a person provide this field with exemplary leadership, with creative thinking, and with innovative programming. These are hallmarks of Kansas City's support for older adults, and we want to thank you for being here today, and thank you for what you do every day. Your partnership and dedication to this event demonstrates really a strong desire on the part of professionals and volunteers in this field to constantly improve the services and systems that support older adults to find purpose, to connect with others, and to continue learning throughout their lives. The last year presented special challenges to all of you on this call, professionally, programmatically, personally. All of you rose to the occasion, provided seamless programming for your communities and your organizations. Many of you demonstrated extraordinary agility in switching to these virtual formats. The seniors and the older adults in our community did likewise, and we have weathered through. We hope next year to return in person at the Kaufman Center. We all enjoy the inspiration and stimulation and networking relationship that is easier to achieve in person. So our goal is to be back in person next year. But this year, I feel very confident that you're going to find this time worthwhile, and as you have for the last several years. So finally, I just want to, in my part here, to thank the organizations and the individuals and companies that are vital to sustaining the Age Positive Conference year in and year out. They're committed to the principles of high quality, low cost professional development. And so here is a very short video simply thanking those people who have made our work possible today. Go ahead, Carmelia. Thank you, thank you, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you for the extraordinary service you do for this community and for helping us come together as a community to serve older adults well.
This is 911.
I think we're back. I'm glad that wasn't a real 911 call. Let me now, with thanks to our sponsors, turn this meeting over to Haley Keller-Strauss. She is a member of the Conference Planning Committee, and she will introduce our first workshop presenter. Have a wonderful conference. It's great being with you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for those welcoming remarks, and another thank you to all of our sponsors that were displayed in the video there. As David said, my name is Haley Keller-Strauss. I'm a member of the Age Positive Planning Committee, and I am on staff with Liberty Parks and Recreation. Before I introduce our workshop presenter, there are a few housekeeping items. Like Teresa said in trivia, she had me laughing. She said, I can't show you where the bathrooms are. Hopefully you know where the bathrooms are wherever you are joining us from today. But there are, of course, a few other housekeeping items. All participants will be muted throughout the presentation. So please enter your questions for the presenter in the chat box. I'm going to do my best to keep track of the questions and then relay them to our presenter this morning, Dr. Sue, when there's a right moment to do that while she is presenting. You can also use the chat to enter other comments while Dr. Sue is just talking, not just for questions, but it's really important that we do the best we can to share ideas with one another virtually and learn from each other throughout this session and all of the sessions over the next 3 days. The presentation will be recorded, and so the recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be made available within 2 weeks following the conference. You'll receive an email announcement. So if you do have to step away for something, don't worry, we will be sending the PowerPoint and the recording of the presentation your way. Those are the housekeeping items we have for today. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce actually my college advisor up at Northwest, Dr. Sue Myllykangas. She is nationally certified therapeutic recreation specialist, and she's a professor at the Parks and Rec program, School of Health, Science, and Wellness at Northwest Missouri State University. And she is going to present our first workshop here for us today at Age Positive 2021. So we'll get her PowerPoint presentation up here shortly. And again, enter anything into the chat, and we're excited to kick off the day here. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Sue.
Thanks, Haley. Let me make sure I have all my buttons clicked and everything's going on. So I'm Dr. Sue Myllykangas. I teach at Northwest Missouri State University. I am the Parks and Recreation Program Coordinator and also the Gerontology Program Coordinator. I am trying to get 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to like working with older adults. It is an uphill battle, but we're winning. So that is a good thing. So today's topic, elder orphans, what can be done to assist a growing population, is actually very personal to me because I am one of these people. And I ran into this concept as I was starting to grow older myself and trying to figure out what I was going to do to get the care that I needed once functional decline started to happen. So this became really, really important. I hope you enjoy what I have to share with y'all today. So here's your learning objectives. There is a handout. I don't know if Kathy got that to everybody or not, but it's basically a fill in the blank handout that has these things on it. And so basically it's keep track of things that you can do with your agency or even personally to help somebody you find that is one of these people. So here's what I want you to do is use the chat box and just zip your comments into the chat box. And Haley, I will attempt to turn on the chat box so I can see it. And I would like you guys to think about this for a second. Think about these questions. How do you currently stay healthy every day? Who motivates you to do things to take care of yourselves? What kind of activities do you do for leisure? Who do you do it with? How much money does it take? Who helps you stay motivated to meet your goals? If you ran into financial problems or needed a loan or just wanted to talk to somebody, who do you call? Who can you rely on? Who could you call at 1 o'clock in the morning? Who do you trust or rely on to give you a hug or to touch you? Who would take care of you? This actually happened to me a few years back. Who would take care of you for an extended time following surgery? I had Achilles tendon lengthening surgery that went bad and got a staph infection, and it took me off my feet for 6 months. And I ended up having to call in a friend who was wonderful and took care of me for those 6 months. But who would you call? And then who do you write down on your emergency contacts for all the forms you have to fill out? Haley, are you getting any comments?
Oh, yes. Yes,
I
yes,
can't see
yes.
the chat. It won't let me see it, which really is a drag.
Someone relies on their pets for a hug and a touch at the end of the day. A lot of people are saying that they rely on family or a spouse. Someone put coffee in there. Maybe that's a motivating factor,
Yes.
or maybe it makes them feel warm and fuzzy inside. So good friends, spouse and siblings, walking dogs each day to stay healthy every day, gardening, perfect time to do that right now.
Yep. All right. So then my next question for everybody is, what happens if you have no one to do that? You're not married, you haven't had kids, you work 60 hours a week, and your social network is pretty small. Now, what do you do? That's who we're going to be talking about today, are the people who have chosen not to get married, not to have children, and who are finding themselves aging and didn't think about the repercussions of those choices. So I want to share with you a video. Hopefully this little thing will work really well and you can hear it.
So what does it take to live to 100 or beyond? As you will see, the answer is not what we expect. Julianne Holt-Lunstead is a researcher at Brigham Young University, and she addressed this very question in a series of studies of tens of thousands of middle-aged people, and she looked at every aspect of their lifestyle, their diet, their exercise, their marital status, how often they went to the doctor, whether they smoked or drank, etc. She recorded all of this, and then she and her colleagues sat tight and waited for 7 years to see who would still be breathing. And of the people left standing, what reduced their chances of dying the most? That was her question. So let's now look at her data in summary, going from the least powerful predictor to the strongest. Whether you're lean or overweight, you can stop feeling guilty about this because it's only in third place. How much exercise you get is next, still only a moderate predictor. Did anybody here know that having a flu vaccine protects you more than doing exercise? And getting towards the top predictors are two features of your social life. First, your close relationships. These are the people that you can call on for a loan if you need money suddenly, who will call the doctor if you're not feeling well, or who will take you to the hospital, or who will sit with you if you're having an existential crisis, if you're in despair. Those people, that little clutch of people, are a strong predictor, if you have them, of how long you'll live. And then something that surprised me, something that's called social integration. This means how much you interact with people as you move through your day. How many people do you talk to? And these mean both your weak and your strong bonds. So not just the people you're really close to who mean a lot to you, But like, do you talk to the guy who every day makes you your coffee? Do you talk to the postman? Do you talk to the woman who walks by your house every day with her dog? Do you play bridge or poker or have a book club? Those interactions are one of the strongest predictors of how long you live.
Did that surprise anybody? Are you getting anything in the chat? No.
Yep, some people said yes, and others said not surprising.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to top that off with what happens after you retire. So that top social sharing, talking to the postman, person who makes your coffee, when you're in a workplace, you talk to a lot of people. I try to imagine what my life's going to be like not teaching when I'm juggling over 100 kids every semester, trying to figure out all of their issues. What's life going to be like for me when I'm not having that stimulation in those conversations? So the term elder orphan started to come up in 2016. Now, I will be totally honest with all of you and throw this out there, that there is a huge debate over the term. There are people that don't like the term. I'm not arguing over a term. I'm trying to show an issue that is out there. Call it whatever you want. So it's basically aged community dwelling individuals who are socially and or physically isolated without an available known family member or designated surrogate or caregiver. They've labeled that group elder orphans. You also may see it written as solo agers. The unbefriended tag is just horrible, but they've got that out there too. Vulnerable elderly, patients without surrogates is what's written on the intake forms as you are admitted to hospitals. And then geographically isolated seniors. So we know that families have started to move around a lot, and it's different than what it used to be, especially with suburbs. So we've got kids moving away from their families. So people who are married run into some of these issues, but not the same as people who are all alone, trying to navigate the aging system. So I'd like to show you another video.
An elderly man picked up the phone last week and placed a heartbreaking call to 911. Turns out it was a wake-up call about a growing problem that has gone unnoticed. Here's Dr. John LaPook.
Clarence Blackman is an 81-year-old Army veteran battling prostate cancer. But cancer wasn't the reason he called 911.
What I need is someone to get to the grocery store and bring me some food because I need to eat something.
I thought, well, you know, I got to have an instant response. And I figured I know that 911 responded very quickly.
A widower since 2011, Blackman came home from the hospital last week to an empty fridge and had no one to help him. In a recent report, Dr. Maria Carney of North Shore
Imagine if you don't have anybody with you to help you.
About a third of Americans aged 45 to 63 are single, a 50% increase since 1980. The report says elder orphans not only combat loneliness and depression, they lack assistance for their basic needs. 911 dispatcher Marilyn Hinson was so struck by Blackman's call, she took a detailed list of his food requests and personally delivered them.
I've been hungry. A lot of people can't say that, but I have. You know, and I cannot stand to see anybody go hungry.
Blackman was then inundated with donations and offers to help.
One lady sent me 6 cans of Spam. I thought, well,
What a wonderful thing that dispatcher did. Doc, thanks very much.
I would love to see that app develop somewhere. I have yet to see one. I tried to bring it to our computer science guys over here, but Maryville doesn't have a lot of senior services up in this neck of the woods. Okay, so you just saw in there that about a third of Americans 45 to 63 are not married and are living alone, or single. And that 50% is going to add to the total numbers of solo agers, people that are going to age alone. If you look at it too, 19% of women chose not to have any children, and that's a 10%, it's a 9% increase since 1980. Also, 22% of people 65 and older, hang on, I gotta get you guys out of my world. 65 and older are at risk of becoming elder orphans. There are 15 million solo agers, and then in the Journal of American Medicine, they said nearly half of all adults who are hospitalized have to have a guardian or a surrogate putting in there. Yes, Bill, yes, definitely. Okay, my computer's doing weird things, you guys. It's cycling here. The other thing, let me go back. The other thing is the states that have the most elder orphans down here: North Dakota, Rhode Island, Nebraska, South Dakota, Massachusetts. I'd like you to pay attention to Nebraska, because I end up sending all of my students who graduate with recreation therapy degrees to Nebraska. I actually won a state award from the state of Nebraska for helping them get their elder population taken care of, because Missouri is not listening to me. So I am hoping during this presentation that some of you can listen to me and help me out, because I teach students recreation therapy, which is actually holistic therapy, physical, social, emotional, cognitive, spiritual therapy that helps a person stay as functional as possible for as long as possible. We just do it with fun and recreation. And Nebraska gets that, but Missouri has not. And Missouri's going to have the same elder orphan issues coming up. So you'll hear a little bit about rec therapy in my presentation. Move window away from shared app. I don't know what this is. Hang on a second, you guys. My program is not responding.
Glitches are part of the game. We're all a patient group. Did we lose you, Dr. Sue?
Did lose her, and I've just readmitted her. Just give a few moments, please.
Okay. I know some other people have been having to log out and log back in with audio issues or video issues. So thanks for being patient with us, everyone. I see Dr. Sue again, rebooting her presentation probably. And some people are saying in the chat, if everyone could turn off their video, that may help everything run smoother. Just, and excuse me for not knowing any IT knowledge, but maybe the bandwidth and everything will be better. So I'm the only one with mine on now, so I'm gonna do it. And we see your screen again, Dr. Sue. You are muted. You're muted, Dr. Sue.
Here I am. Oh my
Yep.
word, so many buttons to click. All right. Where am I? There I am. Okay. All right. So let's get back into the saddle here. So what I've shown you here on this slide is basically that this problem of single agers are going to continue because we've got young people today that are choosing to stay single and not get married. So the problem is not just something of the baby boomers, it's actually moving into Gen X and the millennials. So this is a problem that needs to be taken care of now because it's going to continue into the future if people do not get married or have kids. So topics of interest. So this is provided basically for your agencies. If any of you are looking at programming or what you can do for older adults who are single, here's what AARP has said that older orphans need. How to get around without driving. So we all know transportation is the #1 nasty issue of the world. I have always thought it would be really cool if somebody designed an elder Uber that was an Uber system. I tried to get one going up here in Maryville because students need pocket change and love to drive everywhere, and elders need rides, but can't afford the one taxi we have in town. So how do you get around without having to drive? I am in this bind right now of finding an affordable place to live. When you are down to just living on retirement, I'm not there quite there yet, but I'm looking. It's hard to find a place to live. We've got a bunch of big family houses, but when you're by yourself and you don't want to live in an apartment, where can you live? Making medical arrangements and having somebody advocate with you when you go to the doctor. If you're feeling lousy, it's really hard to pay attention to what the doctor's saying and advocate for yourself. Having someone look after us, I don't know about you guys, but at home in care is really expensive. And how do you get people to help you? How do you navigate that system? Healthcare proxies. You have to designate somebody as your healthcare proxy. If you're alone, who do you pick as the person you want to do that? Financial worries, that's everybody's got those. Trying to figure out how to navigate the finances. Staying physically active and mentally capable. Who engages you? When you're by yourself and you start to feel alone or lonely, you start withdrawing. And when you withdraw, you basically don't have people to talk to and what's going on. Maintaining hobbies. Sometimes with hobbies, you have to be able to have somebody get you to where you need to get your supplies to get back. But how do you stay motivated to do the things you do? How about learning new skills? We all know that older adults can still learn things. Not what my 18-year-olds say, but they can learn things. And then getting a job. So Parks and Recreation, I can show you right now what Therapeutic Rec can help you with. We can do the staying physically active. We can do the maintaining hobbies, and we can do the learning new skills. And those kind of things alone increase social interactions, increase feelings of self-worth, and all of that. And so we can be proactive instead of reactive to the situation. All right, I don't know if you guys know all of this or not, but basically women end up being more financially stressed in retirement and later life than men do. Men typically pass on before women. So there's a lot more women living alone later in life. And there's a thing called the pink tax. I don't know if y'all know about it, but basically that it's the same products as marketed to men that are marketed to women, usually in pink and lavender bottles. And women pay, it's the same product. Women pay on average 13% more for those same things than men do. It's called a pink tax. The other thing is, even though we are trying to get equal pay. 2021, it is still, women are making on average 82 cents for every $1 a man makes. The other thing we all realize with the COVID thing is that women in the labor force is dropping because women are stepping out of the workforce to do the caregiver roles that need to happen when a loved one gets sick. And that doesn't matter if you're a single adult or not. If your parent is sick, you're going to step out to take care of them. The other thing I'm realizing is that if I was married, our bills would have been a little easier to handle, but I only have one income. So with one income, I have to cover all my bills and save for retirement and do everything that two incomes would have done. And in retirement, when you go to buy a house, it costs the same whether you have two incomes or one. So I'm realizing that. Housing expenses later in life. I belong to this website called 55 Plus Retirement Communities, and I'm starting to look around, where do I want to retire when I get done. I cannot stay in Maryville. I have talked to Maryville 100,000 times and told them they are not age friendly. And they need to get going on it, or we're all taking our money and leaving. So I'm looking at where to retire, and I might be able to squeeze out buying a house in the community, but then the monthly homeowner fees are the things that are going to take me down. And I have seen fees anywhere from $300 to $1,300 a month to mow your lawn and take the snow off the sidewalks. And that's a lot of money when you're on a limited income. So women struggle more financially. There's another program, if you want to run one, is how to help younger women prepare for later life financially. How do you save your money? What do you do? So fears about aging, alone, fear of isolation, high cost of housing, healthcare expenses, cost of living, caring for myself, that's a big one for me. If I have to fill out a guardianship or a conservator, that they're calling that depersonalization, because now the person doesn't really know me. They're more of a political, legal person that's going to take care of my needs, not somebody that really understands me. So that's kind of depersonalizing people. Poor self-image, we all know that this can happen anyway with aging. We still want to have a purpose and have our self-esteem boost. This is especially true for the baby boomers, guys. And then lack of community support and services. These are the things that we're all really freaking out about, and what do we do? Okay, so I want to show you this. This was a project that was done in Britain. And there's a difference between being alone and lonely. And we'll talk about that after you see this video.
So they've taken my phone off me and my tablet and my smartwatch. It's still early doors, but so far it's been remarkably quiet. I just fell asleep on the sofa in front of the television. When I woke up, I had that instinctive reaction to check my phone, which is just a normal thing to do, and obviously it wasn't there. It's been a bit lonely, but it's not been unbearable. Being used to living with lots of people as well, it's a big difference. Usually when I wake up, I check like the news apps on my phone to see what's going on in the world, that sort of thing. I think it's not so much about the technology, I've realised, but it's about the feeling of having a connection. I can hear the people in the neighbouring flats heading out in the hallway, off to do something a bit more exciting, I imagine. I'm quite jealous of that. I'm starting to find it quite difficult, to be honest. I can't sleep at all. It's almost like I'm not mentally prepared for bed, because there's not been a beginning, middle and end. It's just been a constant nothingness. Morning. So on the bright side, today's the last day. Just counting down the hours now. and I've just kind of gone into robot mode. If you start overthinking things, you start thinking about how lonely you are. I'm supposed to do these video diaries, but oh, I don't know what to say. Call your mum, I suppose.
Are you Joe?
I am, yes, nice to meet you.
Hello, Joe.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Come in.
Thank you very much.
How did you survive?
It's a good question. It was certainly trying, certainly very trying at times, I think. A real sense of being left out and being alone and not being part of it and being very cut off.
It's not something you think about, is it, until it actually happens to you, and then suddenly you become aware of it and realise the significance of what goes on in the world and how many people are lonely. I was bereaved.
Right.
2.5 years ago.
Oh, right.
Not having someone to talk to hug, to share things with. The more elderly people particularly, it's part of life. I can promise you that it can be devastating.
How do you think we can combat it?
The answer to that, probably the key would be to be aware of people. To talk to someone in that situation who is lonely, you have to, it really requires a little effort, doesn't it? I think that's the key. That's the key.
Okay, so Steph, I was able to look in the chat and see your comments. I agree. It is an infrastructure problem, not a personal choice problem. I do agree with you on that one. I'm trying to just show everybody that the infrastructure that we have, the current resources for people who choose to be alone or what end up alone are not there, especially in the rural areas. I've been working, just so you all know, I've been working in Maryville I've been here 15 years to try to get them to understand that we need an adult daycare center here, adult day program, and they are just refusing to acknowledge any sort of needs. So people up here who are caring for loved ones with early to mid dementia or who can't be alone are just at their own ends to try to figure out how to take care of things. And that's basically one of the main reasons I need to leave. And I'll show you in my next presentation about the senior center. The senior center up here is not doing what it needs to do to get the services to people either. So there's some big aging issues up here. So thank you, Steph, for clarifying that for everybody. What you need to know is that most human beings are psychologically and biologically programmed to need social support systems. And I teach my students all the time that there's a difference between being alone and lonely. And if you listen to people, how they explain how they're feeling, if they come to you and they say, I feel so alone, that's a physical need to be around people. That's get them to intermingle with people. Alone is feeling isolated physically from people. If they say that they're feeling lonely, that's an emotional need to feel connected to other people. And it's the loneliness that's the thing that leads to I call it stinking thinking, where they're starting to give up and they're doing learned helplessness and potentially even start thinking suicidally. So we need to listen to people when they tell us how they're feeling. So here's some physical health things that are leading to social support. So research has shown that low social support is linked to physical and psychological health risks. We all know that we've got a mental health crisis going on right now. The pandemic did not help that at all. It also increases mortality risk, your chances of dying early if you don't have social support. It decreases your interactions with you. When you decrease your social interactions, your emotions and your arousal start to dampen, and so it can lead to depression. They also found that that leads to an increased risk of a heart attack or a stroke if you don't have any sort of stimulation in your social networks. Cognitive skills go down, social skills go down. If nobody's talking to you, I've got a friend right now who's got dementia, early mid-stage dementia, and she basically just answers all of my questions with yes, no, I don't know. And trying to get her stimulated to do things is really rough. Your neurophysiological functioning, that leads to falls. So if you don't get your neurological systems moving and stuff, and all it takes is talking to people and feeling like you're connected with somebody. If you go back to the isolation and the loneliness and what goes on there with everybody, medical complications, there's actually a 29% increase in risk of mortality if you're isolated from people. Your psychological health, your functional declines faster, and your heart attack, your cardiovascular risk goes up. Here's the thing for loneliness, functional decline. So mobility, your strength in your upper and lower body goes down. That means your fall risk increases. That means your ADLs go down faster. It's also been linked to increased inflammation and decreased sleep, like that guy had in the video. Lack of sleep will then spur on the mental health issues. You have a 26% increase in mortality and coronary heart disease with loneliness. But if you take it all together, living alone without the social stimulation is a 32% increase in mortality. So there has to be a way to connect older adults with people. And that is, like Steph said, that is the infrastructure. So here's an example of a lady.
According to AARP, nearly 90% of Americans say they want to stay in their homes as they age, but living at home might mean living alone.
The consequences of social isolation are very serious. We know that isolation increases the incidence of most psychiatric disorders, depression, anxiety, other kind of disorders, fearfulness. If you think about what causes the isolation, one is a reduction in seeking out other people, which occurs naturally with aging. The other issues are the physical challenges of isolation, the ability to get places you need to get. Thirdly is family isolation, where you have family migrating away from parents and grandparents, and then a loss of the day-to-day connection and vitality that families provide for seniors.
Women also outlive men by an average of 5 years. As Americans live longer, preventing isolation will require conscious effort.
When I talk to people who are older, my first question is, what do you do all day? How do you organize your life? How much time do you spend walking? Where do you go? I think the things that make life meaningful and rich for an 80-year-old are the same things that make life meaningful and rich for a 25-year-old, which is interaction, some degree of challenge, connection with other people, and some idea of relaxation, play, enjoyment.
So Laura, you said about home sharing and college students moving in together. I have attempted that one up here too. The problem with that is the stereotypes that both sides have. Both sides have the college kids are out drinking, smoking, and doing weird things, and the older adults are, they're just going to lay around in bed all day, and I don't want to do that. But I have attempted that one too. I'm working on it. Home sharing is an idea. The naturally occurring retirement community concept has been really big too, which is I buy a house, the next house next door comes open, my friend buys it, and then the next one, my other friend buys it, and eventually we are all living in the same area, sharing things. Almost like an old 1960s commune type idea, but we have our own houses. So let's talk about money, because money is always a big deal. University of Michigan did a study and found that 14% were isolated with little social support. Theirs tended to be males, which I thought was interesting. But you'll all notice that they had the mental health issues, the ADL issues, and multiple chronic illnesses all at the same time. Medicare spends an average of $134 extra a month on people who are lonely and isolated. Across all older adults, that comes to $6.7 billion every year on isolation and issues that come from that. Isolation costs more than arthritis does, and I'll show you a little clippy thing here of it. So here's social isolation and arthritis. So it costs more for social isolation. The people who are socially isolated are not admitted to the hospital very often, but when they are, they end up having to stay longer and have more expensive tests. And so the question I have is, does isolation speed up decline, or does worsening health make it harder to stay connected? What do you think?
That's a good question. Can you ask it again, Dr. Sue?
Yeah, does isolation speed up decline, or does worsening health make it harder to stay connected socially?
Isolation, some people are saying, and then both. A lot of people saying that isolation would speed up decline.
Okay. Whoever said both, you're right. Both can be true at the same time. So being isolated does make you decline faster, and it also, if you've got mobility issues or things like that, hearing issues, it makes it harder to stay connected. So there really is an economic interest in addressing this topic. So let's talk about the cost of care. Nursing home bills rose 4%, and that was back in 2015, so you know it's higher than that now. 1 year in a nursing home costs almost the same as 3 years of tuition at a private college. It averaged around $87,600 was the median cost in 2015. An assisted living facility was actually cheaper than having home health come in. It was $43,200 versus $45,000. And then Medicaid, so here's a lot of too, seniors don't understand Medicaid and how it works, and they don't understand the spend downs and all of that. But Medicaid pays for more than half of all nursing home bills. And it represents about a quarter of all Medicaid spending in the country is on nursing homes. So my thought is right along this Carney person who researched, if we can provide earlier social services and support, we might be able to lower the high healthcare costs or prevent the unuse of high testing in healthcare. So I'm all one for being proactive instead of reactive. Here's a visiting angels ad that was on Facebook. So you're seeing it start to pop up a lot more. So home health care is trying to grab those individuals that are living alone. So suggestions that were given by this Carney, the researcher, is to look at communities. And if you all know what's going on, there's not enough healthcare facilities to be able to take every person into a nursing home anymore. So what's going to happen is the nursing homes and assisted livings are going to be for the worst of the worst. The highest need people are going to be using those facilities, and everything else is moving out into the community. And I keep telling my students that they want to study aging and they want to get embedded in their community because that's where everything's coming. is back out. So resource centers, adult daycare centers, I can't even tell you how important those are. Need to have those. The senior centers need to be the type of senior center that's involved with the activity theory of aging, which is stay functional in all domains for as long as possible. That is what therapeutic recreation and recreation does for people, is it keeps them functioning. So we're not just providing fun and games, we're actually providing a type of health care, mental and physical, when we do recreation and get people connected. Multidisciplinary teams need to start caring for patients and looking at the whole person instead of just one thing. I always tell my recreation therapy students that if you get a job in a skilled care or an assisted living, you are the only professional in that building that sees the entire person. Dietary sees physical needs, nursing, doctors, physical needs, social workers, family needs, pastoral care, spiritual needs. Rec therapists are the only ones that see the whole person in one time and what's going on, and they are yet the lowest paid in any of the facilities. We need to do public-private partnerships, linking healthcare teams with community and government agencies. This is a lot like the CVS drop-in clinics and things like that we're starting to see, protective senior services and things. So because I'm in recreation, I have to do a little tap dance of recreation. You all have to know. This is the proactive reactive. This is one of our models, is basically, it's the health promotion, health protection. It's preventative, it's proactive. Here's where the person is not doing well at all. They're at the bottom of the bottom. So the rec therapist comes in with prescribed activities to help get the person back up on their feet. As the person starts to get better, they take on more of their own care and choices. And then when they're back to a functional level, the rec therapist is there for support of the person continuing to do what they need to do. This model fits community healthcare really well. And the students can actually help, the recreation therapy students can actually help people stay as functional for as long as possible if we allowed them to do things in daycares and senior centers. So this was what they proposed for solutions, was to develop a screening tool for social isolation, not the depression tool, not the MMPI, but a screening tool for social isolation. How often do you get out? Who do you talk to? Those kind of things. Public-private partnerships to promote prevention and preventative. Using screening tools and interventions would actually then help healthcare workers during wellness checks and things like that, if they could figure out what the person was doing and not doing. Make sure to advocate for the discussion of social isolation, because a lot of people, out of sight, out of mind, they don't even think about it anymore. And then ensure that it becomes part of the determinants of healthcare, that somebody actually screens people for social interactions, not just physical declines. So if you've been following what's going on in healthcare and hospitals for a while, you'll know that the baby boomers are very picky, and baby boomers want really good, clear communication and feel like they're part of what's going on. Well, the hospitals have caught on to that and are trying to up the customer service and making people happy. So they'll choose their healthcare system over somebody else's. So this quote I thought was really, really fit. By 2018, redesigning patient experiences so it changes behavior, improves the outcomes, is that the industry turns to paying more for value, not volume. When I talked to our president of our hospital up here, he really expressed a need that we need to have services in the community to stop elders from going to the emergency room when they're lonely, because it's costing a ton of money and it's taking up time. And so he says that he's seeing a lot of elders who are just going because they're lonely and they want somebody to talk to. And I have an experience with that with my grandma. When my grandma was around, she used to call the fire department in the middle of the night when she was lonely because she just needed somebody to talk to. So things we can do to help them. So we can do this at home as individuals, or we can do it in our agencies. Commitment to friendship with single seniors or the seniors in general. I've tried to start pen pals. I've moved a lot of my classes into the nursing home and into the community working with elders so that we're not staying isolated here, so that older adults actually have interaction with college students. It's a good teaching model. Social support systems. So let's try to help them reduce stress by getting them connected to the resources that we know about that they don't know. If we can get them into support with others, whether that be a friend, a neighbor, agency, we know that reducing the stress helps reduce serotonin, which improves depression, which also improves sleep. Trying to get them to laugh or be engaged with each other, it actually reduces or releases endorphins and helps with respiratory issues if they laugh. And then it will give them a purpose if you give them a job. So sometimes senior volunteering and things like that happen for the healthier older adults, but when older adults become a little more frail, they kind of get pushed to the side. Having jobs and tasks for them to do, even if it's at home, send them the mailings at home and let them stuff some envelopes for you or do something. It actually fits with Viktor Frankl's theory, his logos therapy. So now let's look at some positive things that we can do for older adults, that some of the infrastructure that's out there, and bigger cities have some.
Cameras followed this old woman living alone at home, and the footage is heartbreaking. Mary Tony was a relatively able-bodied senior citizen from Pennsylvania. She had a bunch of friends at a local senior citizen center, but sadly, she wasn't able to spend all her hours there. While she was home alone, however, she passed the time in the saddest way, and it made one of her companions cry to watch. Growing old isn't as much fun as you might imagine. Though you don't have to support your children or go to work, the so-called golden years aren't so happy for many older people. Indeed, it can be a lonely time, particularly if you have outlived your friends, or if you don't have family members living nearby. This might be hard to imagine when you're young, but the later stages of life can in fact be extremely isolating for many. Back in 2015, Mary was 98 and living alone. Although she had nieces, she wasn't able to stay with them as they had families of their own to care for. Despite spending a lot of her time alone, Mary didn't feel particularly isolated, and she was grateful that she remained mobile. "God is good to me," she said. "I do whatever I can," she added. She wasn't entirely alone, however. Someone would come to pick her up from her house and take her to the Easton Area Lifestyle Campus, a center for senior citizens to socialize. At the center, Mary would get the chance to enjoy some hot food, chat with some friends, and play board games, among other activities. The staff even organized a senior prom for their guests. For a documentary, a camera crew followed Mary around the center to capture a snapshot of her life. She is seen taking part in a music workshop in which she sits at a drum and joins in with some dancing. The center is full of life and activity, particularly so when seen in contrast with Mary's home environment. At the Easton Area Lifestyle Campus, Mary had numerous friends. However, back home, she had no one. "I can't wait until morning comes so I can go to it," Mary told the filmmakers. "I like it down there. You meet friends, you talk to them, you do something to pass your time. Otherwise, like on Saturday and Sunday, there's nobody here. Indeed, at home, it was a different story. She had to find inventive ways to entertain herself, to stop herself from going nuts. And it was what she did at home that captured the interest of the production company. The premise of the film was to take the staff from the Easton Area Lifestyle Campus to Mary's home, so they could see how the elderly people they cared for coped when they were on their own. However, it was difficult for some of them to see. In fact, one of the staff members was brought to tears when she came to understand how Mary spent her time when she was alone. Indeed, the individual told the filmmakers that she'd really never thought about what the center's guests did once they got home. Perhaps the most heartbreaking thing to see was just how Mary passed the hours. To begin with, the elderly woman would take a pile of junk mail. She would then go and sit on the couch with a paper bag by her feet. Then she'd start her routine. First, Mary would tear each piece of paper into strips. After that, she'd carefully cut the pieces into even smaller bits before dropping the shreds into a bag on the floor. To onlookers, it might seem like an utterly pointless activity, but it kept Mary busy. "I have to do something," she explained. Though it might have been difficult to see, Mary was grateful that the staff from the center came to her house. "Thank you all for coming," she said, as the camera captured the tender moment. "It's made my day. I'll never forget it." The 10-minute film was titled Junk Mail, and once it was put online, it soon went viral. And there's no doubt that its message was a powerful one. The film reminded viewers of the loneliness that elderly people often experience, and for many, it struck a chord on a deep level. Loneliness among the elderly is a global issue, but one that some countries are dealing with better than others. For example, the Dutch Ministry of Public Health recently announced a 26 million Dutch guilder investment in a program designed to tackle loneliness among senior citizens. Meanwhile, the U.S. Administration on Aging released a study into the lives of older Americans. It found that a stunning 35% of women aged 65 or over lived alone. Indeed, there are millions of elderly people in America who feel desperately lonely. Thankfully, places like the Easton Area Lifestyle Campus exist, and they provide senior citizens with some much-needed interaction. But not all older people are lucky enough to have access to such establishments. If there's one thing to be taken away from the thought-provoking film, Junk Mail, it's a stark reminder to drop in on the older people in your life whenever you can.
I'm watching your comments in the box, and I think it'd be wonderful. The Dutch thing reminds me of when I was in my master's program. We learned about the Dutch in the rural areas. They actually started a program with the mailmen, the postmen, and they would shrink the postman's route down to be really small if it had a lot of older adults on it. And the postman would actually go do wellness checks on all the seniors when they delivered the mail, and would go in and sit and have a cup of tea and talk to the person for a little bit before going on to the next house for delivery. And that's how they took care of doing wellness checks on isolated seniors, which I thought was a really cool way to do that. So social engagement, let's talk about what we can do if we can get these guys socially together. If you can get them working together, somebody asked in the chat too, what do you do about younger seniors coming into the program? There has to be a shift in mentality. Baby boomers are never going to see themselves old. We're always going to be independent. That's just our little fighting nature. So changing names from Senior Center to Active Adult Center, or programs from senior programs to active adult programs, which is what we did up here. I tried to run some. And then you can also just put it together as a community center, period, not separating ages, and maybe have a section of the community center that runs programs for older adults. The thing that I always thought was weird too is, why do we program recreation for people based on timing of the day. So somebody, if they want everybody in the family to participate, has to be running back and forth to the community center, because Junior does it at 3 o'clock and Dad does it at 6 o'clock and Grandma does it at 10 o'clock. It would be interesting to see if you could run programs all at the same time, but just put people in different parts of the building. So have youth programs, teen programs, adult programs, and grandma, grandpa programs all at the same time. So they all come together. They just go to different places in the building. But it's been shown to actually reduce loneliness and cognitive stimulation. So, and cognitive is really interesting because that can be anything from putting a puzzle together to remembering line dance steps or a fitness routine. That's all cognitive. We ran one of those cardio drumming programs up here for the younger adults, active adults, and they loved it. And we realized
Sue,
how did I get unmuted? Did you all see did you see the video?
yeah. You
Okay.
just muted a second ago.
Oh my word, I wonder what it's
Just a second ago.
not showing me. All right, so let's go back. Did I tell you about the programming?
Yeah, you're talking about drumming.
Okay, so we started a cardio drumming program up here, and they actually it went crazy. They wanted it like every day. And it was a cognitive activity. We realized really quickly that some of the active adults could cognitively still keep up, and others had already started some decline. So it was interesting to get them push forward. Superagers, so with social support networks and talking about feelings during their time, they actually built those relationships. Here's a fun one for you. In Finland, I'm 50% Finn. In Finland, the men use their saunas, it's called sauna, not sauna, sauna time, to actually talk about their feelings. And they've shown that sitting in the sauna together actually reduces the mental health problems of the men who are living in Finland, which I thought was really cool. So opportunities for people to talk to each other and get to know each other. And spending time with other people that are doing healthy things. They're basically showing what to do to other people and motivating them to do it. So if I go to lunch with you and you have a salad, that's going to motivate me to maybe change my eating ways a little bit. Cardiovascular functioning is all in there. Mortality, you got interventions. Oh, here's one, the interventions that rely on technology. So all of us through the pandemic moved to Zoom because that was the only thing we could do. And they found out that that was okay, but it wasn't as good and it didn't have as many health benefits as in-person face-to-face does. I think we all pretty much know that. Pets, dogs, and cats are related to health benefits. Some of you guys mentioned walking the dogs and petting the dogs for touch. That is shown to reduce mortality, but one of the seniors that I talked to up here was concerned about not wanting to get a pet because what happens when I go into the hospital? Who's going to take care of that pet? So there's a need for a foster program for seniors who find themselves going into the hospital. There's a need for somebody to take care of their animals until they get back out of the hospital. So that was a need that was unaddressed too, which I thought was interesting. And they have decided that there is enough evidence to label social engagement, loneliness as a public health crisis. And you saw that in the very first video. So HEDA says most important thing keep people going is connections. And we need to help people stay connected to the things they used to like to do, connected to the people, connected to life and what's going on. And I can tell you, if you've ever been sick and all you have is television, That gets old in about, 8 hours. You're done with TV. So elder orphans are a population that's growing. It's demographically going to boom here in the next few years. They often go unrecognized, and like said before, the community infrastructure is not there to take care of it, and we can be proactive instead of reactive. So here's a program that they set up to assist elder orphans, and I thought that this is in Britain, and I thought this was a pretty exciting.
More news now. People count on their children and family to assist them as they age, but when there's no family for these elder orphans, they can be exploited by others. SNN's Samantha Sonner has more on a local service that steps in to help.
Aging without a family can be overwhelming as you try to navigate a complex healthcare system.
It's amazing how many people just don't have any family. They don't have any children or people close to them that can help them at times as their life changes or in an emergency.
ICOR provides support to these elder orphans.
People refer to us as their surrogate family because they need the support on sometimes a day-to-day basis, whether it be going to see a doctor or if they get admitted to hospital. You know, people can be frightened.
ICOR acts as medical advocates, going with people to doctor's appointments, checking their medications, and asking questions.
And we'll brief the doctors and we'll literally go through the case history of that client. And the doctors love it at the hospital because they've all of a sudden got the complete picture of the client.
They can help make sure clients aren't taken advantage of or talked into unnecessary procedures, like when a client nearing 90 needed oral surgery.
She went in to see the surgeon, and he said, "Oh, let me do all these sorts of procedures on you." And my nurse turned around and said, "Why? You know, she doesn't need all those procedures. She's coming in for one complaint."
ICOR also works with clients with families out of state, so they have someone they trust locally in case of an emergency. And families can have access to ICOR's online communication system.
They can see all of our notes at all times, so they can see what we're doing, how we're helping their parents, and the decisions that we're making. And we talk to them on a regular basis.
ICOR also helps clients with financial services, power of attorney, and fraud protection. Reporting in Sarasota, I'm Samantha Sonner, SNN, the Suncoast News Network.
Samantha, thank you. ICOR recommends people start looking at these services and talking about what they want as they age before they need them. This way they can put a plan in place.
I would love to have something like this to help me. Somebody who can see me and not just what's wrong. So here's some reflections on the presentation. What needs can you identify for elder orphans? Make sure you look holistically, not just physically. What available community services are out there? Where are the gaps in services in your home area? Can you think of 10 interventions or things that either you or your agency can do to assist elder orphans? Are there any partnerships that you can make to address some of the needs? And then I'm going to go ahead and flip this. There's my world. There's Maxine down at the Hallmark store. And you've got my email address. And I'm going to stop sharing this. And then Haley, it's questions and answers. So if you want to just open it up for the rest of the time, we'll go ahead and I'll try to answer any questions anybody's got.
Awesome. Okay, so we have one already. Are there any screening tools out there specifically identifying this population?
Not that I know of. There's the depression screenings, but nobody ever thinks about the isolation. Medical care, healthcare people actually have to talk to the person. And if any of you have been to the doctor lately, you realize they give you a whole, maybe if you're lucky, 10 minutes. So we need to start figuring out a way to just kind of ask questions ourselves and when we see people. And send up the flag.
Another question, what needs to be done to demonstrate loneliness as a public health crisis? Who's leading this work?
Nobody in the United States. Nobody that I know of in the United States, except a couple researchers that I was able to find and get information from. There's literally, I think it's become a little more prevalent since the pandemic, because people started to think about what happens to the seniors when they can't get out any longer. But I don't think, just like other aging services, society is still such a youth-focused society that they start to forget about the older people. And you know, it's one of those, if you know gerontology theories, you know the disengagement theory. And disengagement basically means it's a mutual withdrawal of the elder from society and society from the elder. That's different than what we're facing right now. What we're facing is a pandemic that forced the separation, and it increased the amount of loneliness that's out there. I think now would be a really good time to bring it to the forefront of people and let them know. And it doesn't matter even if you have a partner, you can be lonely. I don't know about you guys, but I was isolated in my house for 3 solid months up here, all by myself with my dog, and it got a little wonky after a while.
Renee asks, what do you think of the Lubben scale? Lubben. I'm not familiar.
Renee, you're going to have to tell me about it.
Okay. I probably didn't even pronounce it right, Renee. I wanted to, Janice up above said that Aging Best had recently started a robotic pet program. One of the participants brought her pet Lucy by their center, and she loved having her. I had not heard of that either.
Okay, so go back, if you guys get a chance, go back and look at YouTube videos. It'll take you a while. And find Paro. It's Parro. It was the first electronic robotic pet that was ever designed. And of course, it was in Japan. It was a seal. It's a white seal. And the Japanese designed it in such a way that it has the same weight as a baby would, and it responds to sound and talking of the person using it. So they used it with elders with dementia first, because it's actually got a heater in it too, I think, so it's warm. And so the people would pick it up and use it, and the seal would respond to them talking to it. From there, they started to develop dogs and cats. So our nursing home up here, Parkdale, actually has some residents with these robotic pets. They kind of look a little creepy. The cat is laying down and it'll turn its head back and forth and it will meow and make sounds. If you pet it, it's got a sensor in it, so it starts to purr. The dogs are the same way. That dogs will kind of purr. It's kind of cool. I'm going to write that down, that Lubben scale.
And a question for you, Dr. Sue, to what you plan to do personally for social support as you age.
Okay, so I have been looking at retirement communities because I know I need a social system. My problem is I can't afford them. So there's a model that came out, and I'm still batting this around. There's an organization called RVing Women, and it's basically single women who are either divorced, separated, or single that like to go travel and have RVs. Well, what they did was they bought up an old mobile home park in Arizona, in Apache Junction, Arizona. And you can buy your rolling house and park it on one of the pads there and have all the services. And that becomes your home address. And when you want to go travel, you just pick everything up, go travel. When you come back, you still got your place to park your house. And it's a bunch of single women who have all kind of traveled together and done things and keep each other going. I'm looking for something like that I could afford to do. Who knows? I want to move back west. I need green chili, and Missouri doesn't know what green chili is. So I want to go back west.
That sounds good to me. Everyone got their campers out during this pandemic and have been traveling, and
yeah. I'm reading these big long comments. Naturally occurring retirement communities. Do you think there should be social component in senior living wills? I would love it. I'll just tell you about my hassles with my wills. So my family pretty much dissolved when my mom died. She was like the glue to the family. Whoever does my genealogy is going to wonder what in the world happened. So I don't have a family to help take care of me. So when I went to get my will together, and especially my medical directive, you have to figure out who do you trust enough to follow what it is you want done, and who will pull the plug if you want them to pull the plug. And that's a big ask of a friend. Luckily, I have a friend that can do that. But the wills are really hard because you have to kind of just continue to go down who's going to do what. And with my wills and everything that's going on with me, I've actually given it to a couple of my students. Some of my students become cherished children, and Haley can tell you all about that. They become cherished children, and a couple of them have made me the godmoms to their kids. So everything I have is going to those godchildren when I get done. Age-friendly, changing communities, more welcoming, inclusive of older adults. I think Kansas City is working on being more accepting to older adults. I don't think your rural areas are doing much. I'll tell you why. I went to, you'll see it in the next presentation, but I went to economic development to try to see if we could get them to hire a certified rec therapist in town for the community, so we could start taking care of the aging programs for the younger people, younger aging adults. And everybody says money. Money is the issue, money's the issue. So I finagled it, and we tried to run a pilot program. When it all came said and done, Maryville doesn't have any money to fund a senior program, but they have money to put a sign at the end of Main Street on both sides saying, "Welcome to Maryville," and they're promoting tourism. So how many of you would like to come out into Maryville, Missouri and enjoy your tourist time? So they just don't get it. They just don't get that older adults are a thing. I tried to explain to them that older adults have the most expendable income, and you're trying to run a town on a bunch of college students, the hospital, and a Kawasaki plant, and the university. And they're never going to get where they want to go financially. And if they don't change the streets, change the transportation, up the health care, do some of the basic infrastructure things they need, have an adult daycare center, everybody's going to leave. And I'll show you what that looks like in the next presentation. Created a survey.
Someone asking if a lonely or isolated senior hasn't reached out to a senior center, how we identify them.
This is going to take your community to do this, guys. So what I've done up here in trying to identify the isolated elders up here is I first started at the nursing home, because then I had families who are connected in the community to other families. And that's how I started to identify who was out there. So you start with the people that are already needing services because they know people that are going to them to try to figure out how to navigate it. And I just worked backwards. And so now I have a list of seniors that are living alone or want to have correspondence or interactions. And I actually pull them into my classes. That's how I do it. So the pandemic offered me an opportunity that I hadn't had before. I couldn't go into the nursing home. I usually teach a class called Therapeutic Rec Interventions with the Elderly, and I would literally throw the kids into the nursing home and say, go, we're going to work with older adults. But because of the pandemic, I couldn't do that. So I had to have a totally online virtual Zoom class. Let me tell you how much fun that was. And I needed to have 9 older adults assist me so they could partner up with my students. And I picked 9 older adults who are retired, living in the community, and would be willing to, and new technology, that was the other thing, to help me with that class. And the kids absolutely loved it. And the older adults loved it and have kept tabs on the kids. They continue to communicate with each other after the class is done. And that was just one way. I just try to do what I can with what I got.
We do just have a few more minutes, so if anyone has another question, you can go ahead and pop it in the chat. But before 10:30 here, want to thank Dr. Sue again for an inspiring workshop to kick off our Age Positive conference. And I've dropped her email address in the chat box there as well. And she had said to reach out to her with any questions or follow-ups that we may have. So we hope everyone is able to join us for the next workshop. The times, they are changing. Dr. Sue will be joining us again. The workshop will begin right at 10:45. So enjoy your short break. And this afternoon, you will receive an email with a link to the participant evaluation from this morning's workshop. So I hope everyone continues to put their thoughts and comments in the chat. I thought we were all bouncing around a ton of great ideas in there. Enjoy your short break, and we'll see everyone back here in about 15 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Sue.
Thanks, guys.